Good stuff that, as I'm sure you'll agree. And more good stuff to come in the next of our classic movies. Now, this one's very different from what you've just seen. It's a light, sophisticated comedy, Topper, starring Cary Grant, Constance Bennett and Roland Young, in the story of a pair of wealthy young wastrels who die before their time in a car crash and come back to perform one good deed. And their idea of a good deed is to pick on a hapless, downtrodden bank manager, and whether he likes it or not, and most of the time he doesn't, shake him out of his rut. Cary Grant at the top of his form, and I know you won't want to miss that. Until tonight, goodbye.
Now on BBC One, we return to the newsroom and Michael Burke.
All 273 people aboard a Pan American jumbo jet are now known to have died tonight when it crashed on the town of Lockerbie in the Scottish borders. People in the town have died too. It's thought at least a dozen, but bodies are still being found. The plane hit a petrol station and demolished 2 rows of houses, sending a fireball 300 feet into the air. The RAF Rescue Centre said a short while ago there were no survivors in the houses. It's Britain's worst air disaster. The plane was a Boeing 747 Pan American Flight 103, which left Heathrow bound for Kennedy Airport, New York at 6:25 tonight. At 7:19, it suddenly vanished off the radar screens over the Scottish borders and seconds later hit Lockerbie, devastating the southern part of a small town of 3,000 people. Rescue teams from all over Britain converged on Lockerbie, but there was scarcely anybody to rescue. Fewer than a dozen Lockerbie people have been treated for injuries. Among those on the plane were groups of American students and military personnel heading home for Christmas. We don't know what caused the crash. Officials say it did not collide with another aircraft, which leaves structural failure or sabotage the most likely cause. Mike Donkin reports.
The remains of Pan Am Flight 103 were strewn over miles of border countryside tonight, still smouldering. Holidaymakers heading for the States were aboard, servicemen returning home. None could have survived. To the little town of Lockerbie, the crash brought unthinkable devastation. Dozens of houses on the south side of the town were wrecked. Cars were engulfed by burning aviation fuel, their drivers still inside. Witnesses' stories are terrible.
I was driving up the road in the car and, you know, I heard this horrible sound. It was like a rushing and a screaming noise, and the whole sky just lit up, and then you had, it was like liquid fire started to rain down on the car, and bits of concrete and debris, and we even found a piece of the aluminium bedded in the car.
Just huge, vast, enormous red glow, just lit up everywhere. I was stunned, you know, I was nearly going to break the vehicle, you know, but I took it easy, and then it must have hung in the air for about 2 minutes, and then this huge flash of flames, big mushroom. You know the way you see these documentaries about bombs dropping and that? That's what it looked like.
That's when it hit the ground, you suppose?
That's when it hit the ground, yeah.
Chaos ensued. Townspeople were evacuated from the worst-hit streets of Lockerbie. Burning cars blocked the roads as ambulances and firemen tried to get to the scene. The main section of the plane left a huge, smouldering crater.
This is where the impact occurred. There's a crater there some 30 yards wide, and to the other side of it, some 20 or so houses, of which just the shells remain. This is the A74, the main Carlisle trunk road. It's collided here, and there's about tons and tons of debris blocking the road, and even cars strewn across it.
Hospitals sent emergency teams to the town, and surgeons and blood transfusion centres stood by. Few have yet been needed. The death toll of 273 aboard the plane and 12 on the ground is not expected to be final. Bodies are still being found. But the number of injured seems to have been few. The main casualty hospital in Dumfries has treated just 5 people.
BBC reporter Ian Pronovich, who you saw at the scene in that report, is on the phone now. Ian, where precisely are you at the moment?
I'm about 3 miles east of Lockerbie, at a place called Tundergarth Church. It's here that they've now found the cockpit and nose of the aircraft. It's lying on its side about 50 yards from the road and remarkably intact. Eyewitnesses talked of a massive shower of sparks and then an almighty bang. As I say, the aircraft front is in remarkably good condition. The glass is even not cracked. But all across the field, and this is a remarkably remote area, there are bodies scattered all over the field. but we're being kept back now. The area is cordoned off awaiting the arrival of accident inspectors. And presumably one question they're going to have to consider is how the nose and cockpit of the aircraft became separated from the rest of the 747, which went on to land in Lockerbie 3.5 miles away.
Is there anything that can be read into the fact that the front part of the aircraft is so far separated from the rest of the aircraft and has been preserved in that way?
Well, it is cut off fairly neatly, it seems, and eyewitnesses do talk of seeing flames before the rest of the aircraft hit the ground in Lockerbie. So obviously one possibility is that there has been some sort of explosion in the aircraft before it went on to hit the ground.
Ian Pronovich, thank you very much. The American ambassador and a special accident investigation team have just left Heathrow Airport to fly to the scene. At Heathrow, friends and relatives of some of the passengers have gathered to wait for news. It's understood that many of the passengers were American, including servicemen from West Germany. Others were British, off to visit families for Christmas.
Pan Am staff have been manning the phones since news of the crash was released, but they've been unable to cope with all the calls that have been coming in. The phone lines have been jammed. Several relatives have become so desperate that they've been arriving at Heathrow to try to find out more information. They're being taken to a room that's been set aside and where 2 chaplains are trying to comfort them. With details of the crash hard to come by, there is inevitably a great deal of confusion.
We have a batch of 4 phones at home. My wife and I have been on them since 9 o'clock and we couldn't get through. That's why I found.
I've got 260 students who are returning to the States. About 100 of them have got Pan Am tickets. They make their own arrangements to go back home, and therefore I don't know whether there are any students on the flight or not.
But the airport authorities are recommending that relatives and friends should stay at home and keep trying to get through by telephone.
The difficulty that the airline is having at this moment, obviously, is to get information back from the scene of the crash. That's one of the great difficulties that the people here at Heathrow have. People are dealing with the incident on the ground in Scotland, and it isn't always their first priority to get information back here.
And there are several phone numbers for information. Telecom, incidentally, have appealed to people to use them as sparingly as possible. The lines have been heavily overloaded. The main number in London is 01, that's if you're dialing from outside London, 897 6333. That's 01 897 6333. There's also a number in Glasgow. It's 041, if you're dialing from outside Glasgow, 041 204 0011. That's 041 204 0011. To recap, at least 273 people have been killed in Britain's worst air disaster. A Pan Am Boeing 747 crashed onto the town of Lockerbie in the Scottish borders. There were no survivors on the plane. A number of people on the ground were also killed. We don't know how many. BBC's Breakfast Time will be on BBC1 starting at 6 o'clock. But that's all from the newsroom tonight. Good night.
And now, the weather. Severe gales will persist over the north and west of Scotland for much of the night, with further squally showers of rain or hail. Elsewhere it'll be rather cloudy, with a little rain, but it'll be mild. Thursday will again be cloudy over many parts of southern Britain, with further light rain or drizzle, although a few bright intervals may develop to the east of high ground. Scotland, Northern Ireland and parts of northern England will have some sunshine in the morning, but also some blustery showers. During the afternoon, the showers will die away as cloud and more continuous rain approach western areas. It'll remain windy in northern Scotland for much of the day, making it feel quite cold, but remaining areas will have another mild day, with temperatures generally around 11 degrees Celsius, 52 degrees Fahrenheit. And our final look at the clock now. It's 27 minutes to 3, and BBC1 is closing down. As you heard from Michael Burke, we'll be back with a special edition of Breakfast Time beginning at 6 o'clock with the latest news on the aftermath of tonight's tragic air disaster. Meantime, Radio 2 is on the air throughout the night, as usual, with news on the hour. Now, from everyone on BBC1, a very good night to you.